Hey guys, Avar here. This may look bad, but I survived this. Also this. But we're saving that part for later. If you've ever wondered how to come back from a bad opening situation, this video is for you, as I have 2 up-tier games in the 190D9 where I carried the team despite starting below dangerous enemy planes. But before I show you any of that, I'm going to reverse this F8F while flying one of the worst turning 190s, which are already planes with poor turn rate to begin with. The only reason I got in this bad situation is because I made some big mistakes in my early game, so if you want to see my breakdown on how to avoid these altogether, I'll include that at the end. Right now, the priority is getting speed to get away from these guys as much as possible. I have the Bearcat coming in on my 6, and if I try to take the dogfight with them in the 190D, which has extremely bad sustained turn rate, it's going to end badly for me against a Yak and a Bearcat. So I have to run away from them. And the issue is that, in the long run, the Bearcat is faster than the D9 down low. So I can't even outrun him long term. I have to get to high speeds and make him compress so that it's harder for him to aim and I can use my roll rate. So we'll begin the reversal now. And the only reason that I'm alive is because I didn't panic earlier, and I got a little bit of speed. I got to high speeds, made it more difficult for him to hit me. But the issue is that the Bearcat drops a lot of speed in turns, and he can slow down very fast. Normally, that's a bad thing for him, but right now it means that he can just slot in behind me and stay. So what I will do is use the 190 flap trick, which is if you toggle to landing flaps and then toggle back to takeoff flaps the moment you see the red text, you will not have the flaps rip off, so you can get a substantial boost to your turn rate. Now, this hurts your sustained turn rate in the long run, but if you're going to die if you don't use it, it doesn't matter what your energy state will be, like in 2 minutes, if you're going to die in 20 seconds. So I will increase my turn rate with the flaps, and I'm just trying to move forward less than he does. So this is where he makes his mistake. Heretofore, he's been playing pretty well, but he goes up and then he turns back down in front of my guns. And so I get a hit in. And then the second mistake that he makes is that he continues the downwards turn and then allows me to cut in behind him no matter which direction he goes. Left, right, straight, whatever. It didn't matter. If he maintained the vertical that he went into, instead of letting me chase him down, then I'm almost certain that he would have survived and killed me, or the Yak 3 would have killed me. Now, you may be saying, Avar, you're definitely going to die to this incoming Yak 3 and the Yak 9 there. And I definitely should have died, but you will get to see my survival and the ace carry at the end of the video. And now for the 9-kill game that I promised. Since this is a full up tier against Britain and Russia, I'm at a massive performance disadvantage. Look at these 2 guys coming in. They are both equivalent or better planes to me in this situation. The Spitfire LF Mark 9 and the 3U are planes with better acceleration, climb, and turn rate, and the 3U is even faster than me, which means that directly engaging an enemy cluster with them, or the enemy team on my own, is likely to end in my death, since they have a bunch of good planes, and the K-84 as well is very intimidating. So I started the match out by side climbing because I knew that they were going to have guys at altitude that I can't challenge by myself, and I will try to take advantage of the way that people prioritize targets. Now, I will talk a little bit more about that in a second, but for now, this Spitfire has made a mistake, which he prioritized the bomber instead of continuing to climb to engage me, and that means that he flew directly underneath me, and he made himself an easy target. Now, that's not necessarily an easy shot to hit, but the mistake that he made is he was not in a position to retaliate if I missed. If I pulled away properly, he wouldn't have had enough energy to re-engage at the moment. So then I go for the N1K. And you may be thinking, Avar, why are you stall pitching up into an N1K that turns better than you while you are 1.7 kilometers below a K-84 that also turns better than you? And the answer is the K-84 is focused on a teammate. The thing about most War Thunder players is that they do not really consciously target prioritize. They don't make decisions based on threat level or cost. They usually go after either the easiest kill or the first guy that they see. So even if your plane doesn't have the best climb rate in the lobby or even close, if you continue climbing in the backline for a few seconds longer than your teammates, most of the enemies will be distracted. Now, that doesn't mean that all of the enemies will be distracted, but a lot of them will be, and that's going to make your experience a little bit easier. Now, again, the Spitfire is distracted by the F-82. He's going to kill the F-82, take him down, and I'm going to come in behind him. Now, what I do is I pop the takeoff flaps. In the 190, when you need to pull lead on a maneuverable plane, you pop the takeoffs, because you can extend them at speed just like that, and then it will increase your pull and allow you to get more lead in. The Spitfire was going to dodge my guns, but I saw that when he barrel rolled and turned, he kept turning into that direction. So I cut off where he was going to go. I predicted it, and then I killed him. So now I will look around and I will make my next decision. I was pretty panicked, but then I see that the Key 84 is shooting at long range, and he's shooting at the Do 335. So now I will employ team dogfighting tactics. The Key 84 above me is definitely a threat. He's slower than me at this altitude in the long run, but with both of us present, if we both go into different directions, then we can pincer him. He has to choose one, and he chose the Do 335. So now I come in behind him, and I'm shooting with the MGs on purpose. I don't have confidence in my aim at that range, but I want him to see me. I want him to panic about the guy that's suddenly on a 6, and then when he goes vertical to defend, he looks like he's trying to stall me out, but he keeps reversing the direction of his turn, and that allows me to get a few shots in. I'm going to get some tail damage. I'm going to make him run away, and I very much wish that I had taken him out right there, had a little bit better aim. Maybe if I popped the landing flaps, then I could have killed him, and that would have been number 10 instead of simply an assist. But the job is done well enough. I've forced the highest enemy off of the altitude. I have a teammate with me, and now, even though I am outnumbered in a plane with significant performance disadvantages versus most of the aircraft in this full up tier, I'm actually feeling kind of okay. Now, the main issue that I have right now is ammunition. Only 200 rounds of a cannon that doesn't really do the most consistent damage. MG151 is not great. The velocity is not great. The damage is not great. So I'm going to have to make sure that my enemies are slow. And the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to go after this N1K. I have the intent to use a sideways energy trap, which relies on him pitching into me, wasting all his speed, and then I come back down on top of him. But the problem with the energy trap is that it requires that he sees you in the first place. He was not paying attention. The biggest thing that kills people in this game is not paying attention. If you have a dude coming at you from that position, you're dead. There are ways that he could have avoided his own death with something like, say, a shallow dive or extending away towards his team from 5 kilometers out, and then I would have caught him eventually, sure, but it would have taken more time to kill him, and then reinforcements might have arrived. He might have survived the engagement. And so you have to be aware in dealing with enemies that are above you. I was aware and managed to stay away and take opportunities and advantages even while I was right underneath the enemy, and these guys were not aware. That's simply the difference. Now, the J2M3 is going to be a bit of a pain, and this is going to be exactly the gun damage I meant. So, the IAI for the 13 millimeters and the MG15120 have extremely similar velocity, so I'm confident that if I'm hitting with those MGs, I'm also hitting with the cannons. The problem is that the cannons are doing basically no damage. And again, come back down. Notice again I have the takeoff flaps primed so that I can get more lead in with the 190, which doesn't lead very much at all if you don't use the takeoff flaps. And I get a hit on. He starts going into a spiral, but then he recovered it, so now I have to spend even more time to deal with him. And when you're in the carry, time is the most valuable resource. Time, as well as making sure that you stay undamaged. You want to be able to conserve your resources as much as possible, use as little ammunition as possible, but you also need to kill them. And so you have to balance between the right mix of aggression and passivity and ammunition usage and spray control. And there's so many factors to balance, and the way the enemies react makes it so different every time that carrying in this game is one of my main hobbies. So now with that J2M dealt with, there will be an N1K incoming. And this is a similar situation to the previous one, except now the sideways energy trap is going to work because he actually notices me. Now notice that he flew on the level to gain some speed, and that means that even though the N1K is essentially a lawnmower engine crammed into a chunky airframe, he could still have some speed to pitch into me. So I'm going to give him a little bit of space, wait, pop the flaps on my way down, and he's not able to pitch back into the head-on. It's about the little micro tactics. If I didn't use the takeoff flaps on the way down, then I might have overshot and might not have hit him. And then if he dodges and gets on my 6, he has 4 cannons, it's a lot closer than I want to deal with. And so now I will be climbing towards the enemy airfield and keeping my advantages, which you need to hoard advantages in the carry situation. I climbed away from the enemy airfield for 2 reasons. Now, if I climb directly towards them as they're taking off, then they're going to be afraid. Most people will camp their base AA, and that means that I can't do anything to them while they're in their defenses, and I don't want that. I'm behind on tickets, and I need to kill all of them. That's the only way to win. The second reason is that the Do 335 has survived his head-on with the 0, and now he is coming back to help me out. And so the longer I wait, the more reinforcements I will receive, and I'm currently in a good position. So waiting a little bit actually turns out to be the choice that gets them to fight me faster. So I will engage the I-225. And the reason for this is because if I want to survive, I can't engage anyone else but him. The A7M is not paying any attention whatsoever, and if the 225 wasn't there, then the A7M would be a very easy kill. But since the 225 would get my 6 and the altitude advantage, if I dogged off for that, I'm not going to. I'm going to try the sideways energy trap, also referred to as a Chandelle or rope-a-dope once again. However, the Soviets stuffed an absolute unit of an engine into that tiny little airframe, and he is going to pull straight into me, and it's going to be a lot more sketchy than it was versus the N1K. However, he was still stall climbing, my speed advantage was just large enough, and then, once I see his nose drop completely, I'm going to drop the WEP and the flaps to minimize my turning circle and come back down on top of him. And he's going to defend me with a diving spiral, which is a very popular defensive maneuver. The problem is, it's also a bad one in this particular situation. It's very predictable. I know where you're going to be, so I can cut off where you're going to be and just ignore your little rolling maneuvers that most people would find difficult to hit. If you think about it, predict it, the defensive diving spiral actually is not that great of a defensive maneuver. You need to get into a negative G zone like I was against that Bearcat. So with that little aside, I'm going to go ahead on with the A7M2, and MG151 will deliver the usual shenanigans. I switched to the cannon only because I thought, well, I need to stretch out my ammo a little bit. I might still be able to kill someone with the MGs if I run out of cannon. So I took the head on with that. I'm running stealth on it. I was hoping he would full commit and explode, and he did full commit, but he didn't explode. So now I have an LA7 to deal with. I have the 0, who thankfully looks pretty engine damaged. And the LA7 I am somewhat worried about. Now the Do-35 I think will take one of them out in the head-on, but he misses every shot somehow and gets set on fire. Luckily he has fire extinguishers, so in the end he actually does come back and kill the A7M in the head-on and survive somehow. But the main issue is the LA7 here. And the reason for this is that we are about at the LA7's performance altitude where it's really dangerous. If you get down on the deck, the LA7 is faster than the 190D, even though the 190D is a mid-range altitude-tuned speed fighter. It doesn't measure up to the Russian magic. So I'm going to be trying to deal with him in a very gloves-off situation. And as an aside, the way that I met my squadron is I actually killed my squadron commander, and I was in the LA7 below a 190D, and I ended up killing him because the LA7 is just that good. So I want to be cautious. I have flashbacks to that time, and so what I'm doing is I'm making wide passes on him, and I'm forcing him to defend against me. So when he makes that defensive split S, I'm not going to follow it. I'm going to let him do that maneuver to bleed off a ton of energy, and then when he comes back up at me, I'm going to wait, bait him up, see if he stalls for me. If he does, I kill him. If he doesn't, then I repeat the maneuver again. Now the Do-35 comes in, the LA7 hard focuses him, and I'm able to kill him as a result. But if he kept defending me, as long as he keeps wasting energy with those split S turns and I'm able to pull over him, eventually I'm going to work him down to the deck where he doesn't have the energy, and then I can commit to a pass. Now it's fairly risky given that the LA7 is such an excellent low altitude plane, but it was the main strategy. I've done it before. It works. Play a little bit passively, play a little bit of wide loops if you see that the enemy is aggressively wasting their own energy, and you will be able to force them down in the 1v1 situation. So now all that's left is to clean up the bomber. I only have 36 rounds left, but it should be easy, right? It took a couple passes, but I did set him on fire, and he goes down, and that's the game. GG fighters, that is my personal best in the 190D9, and on to the next game. This one is a match on Mozdok. I'm squatted up with a few of my subscribers, but we're up tiered on a tiny map versus Japan and Russia, two nations you don't want to be fighting at 5.7 BR. And again, this is because the 3U is so much better than the 190D that he can make tons of mistakes against me and still win because of his climb, acceleration, turn rate, and guns advantages by such a huge margin. And look at that, there's a 3U and there's another one in the background. Sometimes you can't give space to enemies like that because the longer you wait, the more their performance will turn their situation against you. Sometimes you just have to take the fight to the enemy, and that is what I'm going to be doing. So I'm coming in at this 3U. He sees me at the last second, and he tries to play energy. However, he didn't climb enough, perhaps he was stock, and so I'm able to pull in with the help of the takeoff flaps and kill him. So now I look around. Again, you have to have good information to make good decisions. and I will now pursue the Key 84. The reason for this is that I believe the Yak 3U is not looking at me. If he suddenly changes targets, if he has awareness and goes for me, I am probably dead. But in this situation, I'd rather take a little risk, and the Key 84 does not want to take the risk. He does not want to head on me, and paradoxically, he should have head on me to make me dodge, because if I dodge, that means that I can spend less time shooting at him, and maybe he makes it through the head-on, and then his maneuverability will be able to help him out. However, that's not what he did. And so I see that the 3U is being taken care of by my squad mates, and so I will go help the guy who needs help. So I'm going to help my banana blue demon NL. Thank you for the bait, and so I will charge straight back into the furball. So look around again, 3U, big target. However, the J2M2 is hard focused, so I'm going to go for him. Rip his wing off, he's going to go down. That would be about kill number 4 in something like a minute. So J2M, he's going to hit the dirt, and I trust my squad mates to handle that situation, so I'm going to go looking for more kills. Survey the situation, find who to engage, and look around just in case somebody is coming at you from a direction that you did not expect. So I'm going to go after these two LA7s because they're looking at someone else. And you may be asking, Avar, how do you constantly get in situations where you're the one who's not being looked at? Well, not always. And I will have upcoming videos showing what to do when you're the one getting looked at and you have people to deal with and blah blah blah. But for now, I'm reaping the benefits of my early game aggression. If I hadn't taken out all those guys early game, if I simply kept side climbing and did nothing, then I would have like 2 3Us above me, Key 84, and then they would fully wake up. Whoop, missed the trees there. I definitely planned that. It would definitely look cool. Then I would have had people to deal with. I would have had them waking up, their brains coming back after the climb, and generally people are more dangerous during the mid-game than during the early game. During the early game, their brains are still kind of waking up. It's like when you wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning, but during the mid-game, they're fully ready to go, and they're actually kind of locked in. So with 6 kills in 2.5 minutes, let's finally get back to the first game, and I'll show you what I did wrong at the start of the match to get that Bearcat on my 6. So, I made 2 mistakes here. The obvious one is that I got stuck checking the enemy stats and didn't notice the Bearcat coming until it was almost too late. The first is that I didn't account for the matchup. Against American teams at this BR, you're going to have Bearcats showing up, and some of them might even climb like this guy. Sure, I'm in a 190D and a full down tier, but Yak 3s and FFs are a real threat. So if I'd been paying attention at the start of the match, I would have made sure to side climb a tiny bit more to put the friendly 0 between myself and the enemy, and then they probably would have hard focused him instead, and I would have gotten free frags, just like in the 9-kill game. You already know what happens with the FF, so let's skip ahead to where I'm stuck with 2 incoming Yaks and about to get my wing chopped off. I am low, I am slow, and my only priority is to survive. I can't outrun them if I turn away, so I have to go head-on with a group of them, because if they 180 for me, it'll take some speed and buy me a tiny amount of time. So MG151 does his usual trick of no damage in the head-on, and his return shot takes off my wingtip with 1 hit. Yippee. In all honesty, there's not much skill involved in this particular part of the game. I 100% should have died, and I absolutely would have, if not for the teammates soaking up the enemy's attention. The Act 3 turns off before I get near my base AA, maybe he's low on ammo, and I do a 1-wing landing and rearm. Now, we do come back from the 4v8, and I win with an ace, but I've already explained everything I'm doing, from the team play to the flap usage to the energy traps, so I will leave the footage to play without commentary. If you made it this far, drop me a comment. I've linked my Discord in the description for those who want to join my small community, so have fun, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.